Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This just wasn't the way that she should have passed without her family. She died alone in her room.
Heartbreak from families as COVID-19 runs rampant through care homes. At least 3 facilities have seen outbreaks topping 100 cases each. Also,
1,215 healthcare workers have received the COVID-19 vaccine.
BC healthcare workers queuing up for the shot. So who's next in line? And
a lot of us, we're broke. What are we supposed to do?
fears they'll be forced to repay CERB, but with no money to do it. It's a worry for thousands of self-employed but out-of-work Canadians.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Well, for months, BC's long-term care centres have been ravaged by COVID-19. And tonight, at least 3 facilities are reporting outbreaks in excess of 100 cases of the virus.
That list includes the Little Mountain Place Care Centre in Vancouver. And as the death toll rises, so too do calls for more transparency.
Our John Hernandez spoke with one family in mourning.
She died alone in her room, and it was just not fair.
To her loved ones, Corazon Pasqua isn't just a COVID stat. She was a caring grandmother with a large family, beloved for her homemade fries and always being there for her grandkids.
My grandmother lived a long life. She took care of everyone. She mattered. She took care of all her grandkids. And this just wasn't the way that she should have passed without her family.
Pasqua was a resident at Little Mountain Place, a long-term care center that's been grappling with a COVID-19 outbreak since November. At least 119 people there have tested positive. 17 have died.
I'm just trying to get some straight answers.
Family members like Gladys Opeda struggling to get through to staff to find out what went wrong.
What is going on in there? What is being done? And if the staff are overwhelmed at this facility, shouldn't the government step in and help them?
Today, another body removed from the facility, unclear if it's COVID-related. CBC News reached out to Little Mountain for comment, but did not hear back. Meanwhile, both Tabor Home in Abbotsford and the Capilano Care Centre in West Vancouver also have outbreaks exceeding 100 cases and nearly 50 deaths combined.
It's very, very distressing.
Advocates say the mounting outbreaks both a reflection of what's happening in the community and the heavy toll the pandemic is taking on healthcare workers.
I can appreciate that, as the weeks became months, that strict adherence to a very onerous PPP protocol started to slip a little bit. And, it just takes a little bit and then it takes off.
The province contends measures are in place, admitting that the virus can still thrive in these settings, but the vaccine is on the way.
This also speaks to why it is a focus for us to get as many people who work in long-term care immunized as quickly as possible, and as soon as we are able, we will be taking vaccine to residents in care homes, and I'm hopeful that will happen in the coming weeks.
In the meantime, a plea from those who have lost to those who are at risk.
Like, these seniors matter. Their lives matter. And I just want them to know that they're not forgotten and that we care for them.
John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Deaths in long-term care account for the bulk of BC's death toll, which now stands at 713.
21 more people have died from COVID-19 since yesterday's provincial health update. There are 673 new cases of the virus in our province. BC will likely top 45,000 cases tomorrow. 358 people are currently hospitalized with COVID-19. 93, or just over a quarter of those, are in critical or intensive care.
And just over 10,000 people currently have the virus in our province. Another roughly 10,000 people are under active public health monitoring. 806 more people received the Pfizer vaccine yesterday. That means there have now been 1,215 doses in total.
And starting next week, the provincial government says it will receive weekly vaccine deliveries for clinics in every health region across the province.
Our Tina Lovegreen joins us live with more on this, and it would seem, Tina, that plenty of people are ready to accept the vaccine.
Yeah, Tanya, it appears that way. There was a huge lineup of healthcare workers waiting to get the vaccine today. Dr. Bonnie Henry, as you mentioned, says 1,215 healthcare workers have received the vaccine so far. But she also mentioned that those numbers were last updated yesterday, so I suspect they're much higher now after today. She also said BC is expecting to receive weekly vaccine deliveries, perhaps even multiple times a day. So the plan is to first immunize frontline healthcare workers, then residents living at long-term care. And then the goal is between now and March to vaccinate people over the age of 80.
We will have a system for making sure that people have equal or equitable access to vaccine. We're still working through those details as we get confirmation of when we might receive more vaccine. So please be patient.
And starting early next week, the goal is to have immunization clinics in every health region across the province. But of course, health officials are reminding people to keep safe, keep those gatherings small, because while we are seeing a small number of vaccines here, the active case numbers are still high, and it's not until September of 2021 that the province is hoping everyone who wants a vaccine will be able to get one.
And Tina, Dr. Bonnie Henry also talked about new recommendations on when to get a COVID-19 test. What were those?
Yeah, you know, we know that COVID-19 symptoms can be similar to other illnesses, especially this time of year, such as influenza or the common cold. So the new recommendation based on the latest data is that if you have any of these symptoms, and if we could bring it up here, so fever, chills, cough, loss of smell or taste, or difficulty breathing, get a COVID test right away. Doesn't matter if you haven't been around anyone who has tested positive or if you suspect you might have. The recommendation is get in there and get tested. But if you have these other symptoms, wait and see, because they're common this time of year. So if you have 2 or more of these, you can wait and see if they improve over the next 24 hours, or you can go in for a test.
And Tina, we also heard that the hospital bed capacity is nearing 90% now. Is it time to set up those field hospitals like the Vancouver Convention Centre had one? And how quickly can that be done if needed?
Yeah, those field hospitals are ready to go within a 48 hours notice. That's what we heard today. But we are not at the place that we need to quite do that, say health officials. The North has been a challenge where there has been a number of hospitalizations. We've seen people get transferred from there to various hospitals here in Vancouver or Vancouver Island. But Dr. Bonnie Henry says we are managing, but it's just a reminder to keep those gatherings small.
We are bumping up against that stretch in our health system, in our public health system. We've flattened our line, but we have not yet come down to the level that we need to. There's still too much transmission in our community, and that reflects in outbreaks in our long-term care. It reflects in workplaces. It reflects in cases that we see in schools.
Health Minister Adrian Dix also said that we do have the capacity to reduce surgeries if absolutely necessary, but he said that the real challenge here isn't the continued stress, isn't the capacity of beds, but rather the continued stress that doctors and healthcare workers have been under over the last year. Mike, Tanya?
All right, thanks so much, Tina. That's our Tina Lovegreen reporting live for us tonight. Well, a fire that broke out last month at the Burnaby Hospital, causing extensive smoke and water damage and contributing to the spread of COVID-19, has now been deemed an act of arson by Burnaby RCMP.
CBC's Mira Baines is live outside the hospital tonight with more on this. So, Mira, do police have any clues about who may have set the fire?
Well, that's right, Mike. They released more information today. RCMP here in Burnaby say the fire that broke out about a month ago was a deliberate act of arson, and they released an image of a person of interest. And now this fire broke out on the 2nd floor of the north wing, and they consider it deliberate. And they said that it led to the closure of the emergency room. Hospital patients and staff that night were forced to evacuate the building. Fraser Health says it led to the spread of the COVID-19 virus. About 9 days after the fire, 5 people died. And police released this image of a person of interest and say this person is not considered a suspect. This is what Burnaby RCMP had to say.
There's over 100 surveillance cameras. Speaking to the investigators, it's One of them told me it's the biggest arson scene they've ever been to. So there's a lot to go over. It took over a week just to process the scene itself. And of course now, combing all the video, speaking to all the neighbors, trying to get video from the area, not just from the hospital. It's quite extensive. We're doing our best there.
And Mira, you've spoken to people in the neighborhood. How are they feeling about all this?
Well, Tanya, this is a fairly residential neighborhood that surrounds Burnaby Hospital, and they say they've always felt safe in the past several decades that they've lived here. I want you to take a listen to what some of the neighbors had to say tonight.
It's a bit concerning, why now, especially with the COVID and all that?
A lot of the neighbors around here, I know a lot of them, and they're a little concerned about it, not knowing whether something's going to happen to their place.
Burnaby RCMP are hoping any neighbors, any healthcare workers, or anyone who may have been walking by that day, November 15th, when the fire broke out, who may have seen anything or who may have seen this person of interest, they want anyone to come forward with information to police. They've set up a tip line so that witnesses or anyone can come forward to them and speak to them about what they may have seen that day.
All right, Mira, thanks very much. Mira Baines live in Burnaby tonight. Well, a BC musician is one of the thousands joining the chorus of self-employed Canadians who fear they may be forced to repay their Canada Emergency Response Benefit.
As our Zara Premji explains, many don't know where they'll find the money to repay the government now that the pandemic has halted their careers.
We're broke. What are we supposed to do?
Adam Sheikh says when work dried up because of the pandemic, so did the money to support his family. So he turned to the government and the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, to get by. But this month, he, along with some 441,000 others, received letters from the Canada Revenue Agency asking for more information from him to determine whether he actually qualified for the money he had already received.
They could have been much more clear in some of the definition.
The composer, father, and husband says he thought the income he had made from a rental on his property was part of his total, but it's not.
I wasn't fraudulent. In the best of my honestness, copied the box down from my tax return.
And now, in a worst-case scenario, he's wondering how he'll repay the government.
My son came down from upstairs and offered to sell toys to help. Like, you shouldn't have to do that.
Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh agrees.
Even if someone made a mistake, but they applied in good faith, they shouldn't be the ones that this Liberal government is pursuing.
The CRA says for those who have to repay, it will work with them on a repayment schedule. And the Prime Minister tells CBC News, for now, if you receive the letter, you shouldn't worry.
During Christmas, you don't have to think about January 1st as any deadline.
But he isn't clear on whether forgiveness could be granted to those who made a mistake in good faith.
We're going to work with people. We're going to look at what the options are, but I don't want people to worry about repaying.
The Prime Minister's reassurances that a plan is in place is cold comfort for Sheikh.
It's just shuffling some things to another pile, and it's not addressing the systemic fundamental problem that a lot of us, we're broke.
Sheikh says he'll look into adjusting prior year's taxes to try to fix the issues and hopes there still may be a simpler solution, one that doesn't leave him in financial turmoil. But this holiday season, he still has a lot of questions.
We're screaming for help, and I don't know if we are totally being helped.
Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
And you can watch more of the interview with the Prime Minister tonight on The National at 10 o'clock on CBC Television. And tune in this Sunday to watch the full interview on Rosemary Barton Live. That's at 11 a.m. right here on CBC Television.
Amid a COVID-19 outbreak at its ski resort, Big White near Kelowna is now canceling reservations for anyone outside the central Okanagan.
Letters are being sent to anyone who booked a stay with an address outside the area, indicating their holiday vacation is no more. The cancellations go right up into January the 8th, in fact. The letter says management is simply complying with the province's restrictions.
There are at least 60 COVID-19 cases now stemming from Big White. And as Greg Rasmussen shows us, the outbreak illustrates the fine line that ski operators and local politicians are walking between COVID safety and business survival.
At every turn, Canada's biggest ski resort is dramatically different. The normal bustling village is quiet, and getting up the mountain requires a reservation.
He's a single rider, so he will get into a gondola all on his own.
There is an official government advisory saying don't travel to Whistler, but the resort doesn't police where people are from.
It's not something that we can control. What we can control is the safety protocols that we have in place, being open.
In the BC Interior, Big White Ski Resort is dealing with 60 COVID cases confirmed this week, mostly in workers who live in shared housing. On the Hill, worry.
We're seasons pass holders, so we want to be here as often as we can.
Let's hope they get under control.
Late today, the resort announced anyone booked to stay between now and January 8th will have their reservations canceled unless they live in the local area. Tourism operators are left walking a fine line, noting the travel advisory doesn't make it illegal to visit. Whistler's mayor declined to directly tell people to stay away.
We're asking people to take very seriously the direction that Dr. Henry is providing.
With restaurants and pubs sitting mostly empty, this brew pub has switched to selling canned beer rather than pints at the bar.
It's the majority of our business now.
A few out-of-towners are still stopping in for a beer.
But now we mainly just see people from Vancouver that are coming up. So, it's a catch-22. We're happy to see them, but at the same time, we don't really want them to. So.
On the Hill, a smattering of out-of-province license plates, with many locals saying there's a plus to fewer visitors.
It is nice to have the mountain to ourselves as locals.
Make pretty turns, make pretty turns.
Not so good for local hotels, which predict a 45% drop in business compared to last year. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Whistler.
Well, to provincial politics now, and BC's new finance minister has delivered her first economic update. The fall financial snapshot shows the continued impact of the pandemic on BC's economy. The deficit has now grown to $13.6 billion, the bulk of it stemming from increased government spending, including the $1,000 recovery benefit for families. Selena Robinson, though, also highlighted some positive signs of economic recovery.
With gains in employment, retail sales, and housing activity. BC's record high capital investments continue to fund new projects across the province. And while the province has significantly increased its borrowing forecast, our debt remains affordable because of low interest rates.
$50 million.
She adds the province should expect a partial economic recovery next year, but it may not bounce back fully until late 2022.
BC's Police Complaint Commissioner is reopening an investigation connected to the death of Miles Gray. The 33-year-old died during a backyard arrest in Vancouver in 2015. The incident there escalated and Gray was taken down by VPD. This week, we learned the 7 officers involved in the incident won't be facing charges. The Crown, however, says there is no clear picture of what happened because of contradictory accounts by the officers. The commissioner will be looking at police conduct and training to try to prevent such deaths in the future.
Well, police believe there are multiple witnesses to a stabbing that happened Halloween night at Vancouver's Empire Fields. The victim was first hit in the face during one fight before being attacked again a short time later.
During the second altercation, the same 31-year-old man who had been earlier punched in the face was stabbed multiple times in the torso. He sustained serious and life-threatening injuries.
The suspect is in his 20s. He was wearing black and carrying a red and white striped shoulder bag at the time. Police say hundreds of people were in the park at that time, and some have information that could help identify the suspect. Anyone with information is asked to call the number on your screen.
A business case for the new George Massey crossing is in the hands of BC's Transportation Minister tonight. The case details 2 final options. One, an 8-lane immersed tunnel. The second, an 8-lane suspension bridge. It's now up to the province to review the case and make a final decision. It's not clear what the estimated cost for the project will be, but any new crossing isn't expected to be ready until the end of the decade. Until then, the government is spending $40 million on upgrades as an interim measure.
An announcement from Ottawa now that has big implications for BC. The federal government has announced that fish farms in the Discovery Islands will be phased out within the next year and a half. Fisheries minister said it was in consultation with 7 First Nations in the Discovery Islands area that led to the decision. They're going to remove 19 open net salmon farms from the area. Critics have long said those farms are contributing to the collapse of wild Fraser River salmon stocks because sea lice and other pathogens transfer to juvenile fish migrating through the narrow channels.
This has been a very difficult decision. I recognize that aquaculture has an extremely important role to play in the BC economy. One of the things I have to do is develop a blue economy strategy, and I know that they have to play an extremely significant role in that. Aquaculture has a place. We just need to make sure that we're working together to see what that place is and how we work towards that. We have to do in partnership.
The farms have to be fish-free by June 2022. The minister expects 80% of the 3 million fish currently in the pens will be gone in time for next year's Fraser River outmigration.
Johanna Wagstaffe here now with the forecast. I admit I think I've lost track of the round that we're in terms of the rain, around, I don't know, 7 or 8.
I don't blame you.
But this strange orange orb appeared in the sky briefly today.
Yes, I think you might be referring to what we call the sun. Yeah, I was also pleasantly joyful to see the sun today. It's amazing. Just a bit of lifting of the sky can lift spirits. We really kind of needed that break today. Yeah, I should have added them up before having to add up on air. But let's see. I think this is storm number 4 hitting us tonight with 5 and 6. Still to come. Let me take you first to the warnings because the next storm that's moving in before tomorrow morning is going to bring some big winds as well. Everyone in yellow under the wind warning for Metro Vancouver included. Those are gusts to 70 kilometers per hour, especially through the mid-morning hours. That front will roll through in the afternoon. It'll still be a breezy afternoon once we get through that front. Temperatures back up to 100 kilometers per hour for the west side of the island as well. So that front is also bringing some steady rain. Enjoy the next few hours before the rain ramps up across the south coast. I'll take you through to the next sunny break. The yellow orb will appear again. Details coming up.
We'll look forward to that. All right, Joe, thanks very much. And a quick reminder, you can also watch our newscasts live on the free CBC Gem app.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
It has been a long time grounded why the Boeing 737 MAX may yet fly again with some very strict conditions. That's coming up.
And thanks so much for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Residents of a First Nation in northern Manitoba are staying home because of the pandemic, and they're getting creative too.
They are singing carols in English and Cree for a competition put on by the local health center. And as Austin Gravish reports, there's a $4,000 prize on the line.
Spreading some virtual holiday cheer in English and Cree. Three generations performing Silent Night together while staying apart from friends on the Matthias Colomb Cree Nation. The videos quickly gaining traction on Facebook. 11-year-old Nathaniel St. Clair's performance garnering hundreds of likes online. He says the stakes are high.
I feel so relieved, and I also feel so happy.
Over $4,000 is up for grabs in prize money. It's all in an effort to encourage people to have safe fun at home while not going out.
I hope I get the money.
Nadine St. Clair says it's more than just a competition.
For me, I don't want to lose the language, my language.
Her son Nathaniel loves to talk to elders who speak Cree.
Sometimes he doesn't understand what they're trying to say to him, and we have to explain to him.
Unlike many other Indigenous communities, Pakatawagan has no current active COVID cases. The community is still in lockdown.
We're pretty much stuck at home, so whatever we could do to
pass the time, you just do it.
The winners are expected to be announced on Friday. Austin Grabish, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And the winners of that competition, by the way, will be announced tomorrow. And the Indigenous Studies program at the University of Alberta has put together a special recording of a holiday favorite, also in Cree.
Yeah, they've been reaching out to elders during the pandemic, and this is part of the project. Here's a sneak peek at the song.
Wow, I didn't want it to stop.
Exactly.
Keep going there.
I'm sure it's online. Check it out.
Yes, we'll have to, certainly. We'll be back in a few moments with more COVID-19 news from across the country. Stay with us.
Ontario says it is adding billions of dollars in funding to long-term care homes in support of thousands of jobs. More COVID deaths by far have happened in those homes than anywhere else. But it's a situation even worse in homes run by private chains. David Common brings us exclusive details on which ones.
COVID is surging again in Ontario care homes, and once inside, it has killed an average of 3.7 people per 100 residents in the mix of homes. But zoom in on just the for-profits, that rate jumps to 5.2. And some chains fared far worse. Rika at 8.6 deaths, Southbridge at 9. Lisa Levin represents the better-off not-for-profit sector, which has quietly touted its differences for years.
Things like lower mortality rates, less falls, less use of antipsychotic medication.
For-profit Southbridge did not respond to requests for comment on the weeks-long statistician-reviewed CBC analysis. Rika, which owns this home, did, calling it flawed and not an accurate reflection, and blamed outbreaks early in the pandemic before COVID was better understood. Like many of the for-profit chains, it also pointed to community spread and a greater prevalence of older building design, where residents are packed closer together as the main factors. Indeed, 22 years ago, the government banned construction of 3- and 4-person rooms, in part for infection control, but grandfathered in the hundreds already built, mostly, as this elder care expert says, in for-profit homes.
You could rightly ask, well, why don't you put some of your profits into renovating your facilities? So I think that it hasn't been a priority for those homes.
Many homes have asked the province for more money to upgrade, while some nonprofits have fundraised or set aside cash each year.
It goes into taking care of the seniors, and it doesn't go to shareholders or profits.
That report from David Common in Toronto tonight.
Well, health officials in Ontario are reporting a single-day record of new COVID-19 cases. 2,432 people all tested positive in the past 24 hours, and almost 1,000 people are currently being treated for the virus in hospitals. It's stretching the healthcare system there to the brink, and as Lorinda Redicop reports, it's prompting that province's hospital association to call for stricter lockdowns.
5 of those people who died in the past 4 days were in my ICU, and they died of COVID-19.
Dr. Michael Warner is one of many health professionals seeing COVID rip families apart. He describes what the final moments are like for patients.
You might be lying on your belly because that's the only way that you can breathe. If we have time to get the iPad ready, we organize a Zoom call with your family. They're crying on the Zoom call as you take your last breath. And you're alone. You're with us, but you're not with the people who know you.
Today, the Ontario Hospital Association put out an urgent call to the province.
Well, the situation grows worse by the day.
The OHA wants any region in the red zone to join Toronto, Peel, York, and Windsor in an extended 28-day lockdown. It also wants the province to look at tightening the current lockdown restrictions. Along with record case numbers today, 23 more people died. There are 919 people in hospital. That's down from yesterday. But the numbers of those most seriously affected are up, both in intensive care and on a ventilator.
Our message really is about speed. We can't wait really much longer. We need swift action. It has to be comprehensive, and it has to strengthen the framework that we have in place today.
The Premier wouldn't commit to anything so far.
It's very, very concerning, the situation we're facing. Right now, Cynthia, everything's on the table.
He said he wouldn't hesitate, but also said this.
The worst thing we could do is rush out there and make a snap decision in a heartbeat. We have to make sure if we do make this decision, is it going to be 2 weeks? Is it going to be 3 weeks? Is it going to be 28 days?
The chief medical officer says they are discussing the possibility of tougher measures for lockdown or gray zones, and he called it a darker shade of gray. Final decisions are expected to be made tomorrow by Cabinet. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
After being grounded for almost 2 years, Transport Canada has taken the first step toward clearing the Boeing 737 MAX to fly again. MAX flights were banned after 2 deadly crashes killed 346 people, including 18 Canadians. As Ashley Burke reports tonight, regulators have approved a number of changes to the aircraft with what they're calling some unique Canadian differences.
This is a test, but in the new year could be the reality. For months, Transport Canada's pilots have taken to the skies to verify Boeing's changes to its 737 MAX. Today, the government announced it's given the green light to move on to the next step of approving the aircraft to fly again.
This plane has been looked at very, very carefully because we want to make sure that we absolutely fix it, and we feel very confident that we have done our homework properly.
The government spent 15,000 hours studying the MAX after 2 deadly crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia grounded the planes worldwide. Investigations found in both cases software flaws forced the planes down after getting fed data from a faulty sensor.
I don't think it should fly again. There's a lot of grandfathered hazards that are still on this plane.
Moore's 24-year-old daughter Danielle was on board, on her way to a UN assembly in Kenya.
To think about, what I'll be missing in the future. Going on trips with her, perhaps seeing her offspring and, being a grandfather, that's been taken away from me.
I found what I think is a serious flaw.
This flight control system expert has alerted Transport Canada that even with fixes to the plane's software, if a bird hits a sensor, the plane could still get faulty information.
And it could cause the airplane to stall, which means the airplane falls like a rock out of the sky.
He said Transport Canada told him yesterday Boeing adequately addressed the matter. The government said before the planes are cleared to fly again, pilots will be mandated to undergo more training. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Amid a rise of COVID effects nationwide, governments are faced with the question, tighten restrictions or not? Weighing the risks and the benefits of clamping down, that's next.
It's hard to find people opposed to peace, but it's also hard to find people willing to get actively involved in campaigning for it. Well, in British Columbia, there are some women who don't shy away from that task, and they aren't young either. In fact, as Keith Bogue tells us, they're grandmothers. They call themselves the Raging Grannies.
Oh, no, lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside.
If they had to make a living this way, they probably couldn't. Rhythm and harmony are foreign to the Raging Grannies, mere details. Ain't gonna study more. They roam the shopping malls of Victoria, a flying squad of anti-nuke, anti-arms race, gray-haired grannies in search of an audience. They're sly about it too, relying on the fame of others to lure the crowd. This time Pierre Burton is the bait. The Grannies have crashed his book tour.
And we won't be the 51st state. No, we won't be the 51st state. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Grannies are no strangers to the peace movement. Betty Brightwell began watching for nuclear-armed warships off the coast of Vancouver Island even before she became a raging granny. She checks regularly with the Coast Guard to see what foreign ships are in port. It's a new way of spreading an old message.
We were really reaching people. They liked what we had to say, and they felt part of it. I think that was the greatest thing that happened.
If you try to work in all areas, you just burn yourself out. We have to work in our own area. That's what we're doing. But we have to be knowledgeable about what's going on in the rest of the world.
The Grannies speak to any issue they like. They have no responsibility to other peace groups or political organizations. They do just as they please.
Good afternoon and welcome.
They've become legitimate spokespeople on a number of issues. On this radio show, a granny is crusading against war toys.
There are lots of cooperative games and there are lots of things that they could play with instead.
But it's the street theater which has brought them fame. And believe it or not, they rehearse for it at least once a week.
Oh, we're just a gaggle of grannies, urging you off of your fannies.
Their guiding light through all of this isn't actually a granny herself, just a budding songwriter with a social conscience, a talent for satire, and an irresistible urge to polish the granny's act.
I get very wrapped up in, you know, the timing and whether we're coming in all right and the pitch and all that kind of stuff. So.
Oh, I see. You're a bit of a perfectionist.
Well, I've been accused of that. I don't consider it a perfectionist. I just have standards.
Lately, the Grannies have expanded their consciousness, tackling issues outside the peace movement, things like free trade and the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service.
Subversive, oh, ceases, Canadian security.
But peace will always be the raging Grannies' #1 issue. Anti-war songs, their trademark.
So the Ruskies did not have tests for age.
Keith Boak, CBC News, Victoria. Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
My mom hasn't gotten any information on how her mom died. Like, what is going on in there? What is being done?
As BC's death toll rises in long-term care homes, so too is the call for more transparency. At least 3 facilities have COVID-19 outbreaks, topping 100 cases apiece. We hear from those mourning the loss of loved ones who died alone in their rooms. Families are demanding more accountability around what is being done to curb the spread of the virus.
But we do expect and are planning for immunization clinics in every health region across the province starting early next week. And I know many people are eagerly awaiting this.
BC healthcare workers are lining up for the COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Bonnie Henry says more than 1,200 have already had the shot. Next in line, workers and residents in hard-hit long-term care facilities.
My son came down from upstairs and offered to sell toys to help. Like, you shouldn't have to do that.
A BC musician is among thousands of self-employed Canadians who fear they may be forced to repay the Canada Emergency Relief Benefit. But because they're out of work, they worry how they'll be able to come up with the money to repay the government. The Prime Minister tells CBC News for now, people in those situations shouldn't worry. But he isn't clear on whether forgiveness could be granted for those mistakes made in good faith.
As the second wave of the pandemic worsens, many premiers are considering introducing more restrictions tonight.
But as CBC's Hannah Thibodeau tells us, they have to take many factors into consideration, and that includes the mental health of their constituents.
This is the reality of the pandemic. Provinces forced to shut down parts of the economy to stop the spread of COVID-19. Businesses simply not able to survive. And premiers considering more lockdowns, but grappling with the damage it's causing to mental health and even fears of increased suicides.
We're seeing, addictions rise right now. We're seeing suicides rise. So we have to measure everything. It's not always health. Health is number one. That's the number one priority. Without health, we don't have our economy.
Every day has been a challenge since February and March, when we saw the arrival of COVID-19 and the consequences it's had on people's lives.
It's estimated that 165,000 small and medium-sized businesses across the country are at risk of closing due to the pandemic.
Many of the business owners are calling in tears, seeing their businesses vanish in their hands, but a dozen of them have contemplated suicide, taking their own lives. We've had to provide our own counselors at CFIB with some support to help them provide advice and counsel in dealing with the trauma that they're facing every day.
Now some businesses are preparing to close for a second time as more restrictions come into effect in some regions of the country.
There's no reserve or no fat left to trim in businesses at this stage. So the degree of desperation that we're hearing right now is quite incredible.
A recent study done by the Canadian Mental Health Association shows 40% of Canadians say their mental health has deteriorated since March, and the decline is more pronounced in those who are unemployed.
So many of the things that perhaps we took for granted before that contribute to our mental health have disappeared. So the social connection with family and friends, the connections we experience through work, a reliable income, things like this.
While the vaccine is providing hope, experts say that mental health issues because of COVID-19 will have a long-term impact, well after life gets back to normal. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Still ahead, the kind of heartwarming story we all need this year, and it's courtesy of a kindergarten class. We'll share their surprise with you after the break.
20 minutes in front of 7 o'clock on this Thursday evening. A live look, Port of Vancouver, downtown Vancouver this evening. Bit of a break from the relentless rain today on the south coast. The sun even popped out, but the rain is returning, and it's bringing some wind with it. We're going to find out about all that from Johanna next.
We are really pleased to be able to connect today with local singer-songwriter Sarah McLachlan. Sarah, hello there.
Hi.
Now, this can be a really loaded question in 2020, but how are you?
Yes, that is a loaded question. Right now, I am doing pretty wonderfully. My daughter is coming home from music in the next couple days, and so my family will be reunited. And yeah, it's been a really crazy year. A lot of real highs and real lows. So I'm looking forward to 2021, as I'm sure everybody else is as well.
For sure. Now, are there any particular, causes that have sort of stood out for you as important this year, things that you do want to be involved in?
I think it just the awareness and the gratitude that I feel for people who continue to go out there and do the jobs that they have to do to make everything run and work it's immense. One of the things obviously most near and dear to my heart is my School of Music, which is a nonprofit, and we rely on our donors, and we have amazing teachers and staff and wonderful kids. COVID obviously shut everything down at the beginning, and we managed to open back up in September and get these kids in-house into the school, making music together in a different way, but still doing it, I think is really important. I think it's taught us how to connect in different ways and how incredibly important it is to stay connected.
Well, but you talk about this heightened emotional state. I mean, and as a creative person, as a performer, songwriter, what's this time been like for you? I mean, how do you keep the creative juices flowing?
Well, at the beginning, I have to say I kind of shut down emotionally. I think it was so overwhelming, the uncertainty of what was going to happen to all of us. I was actually berating myself a little bit at the beginning, going, this is the time for you to write about all this stuff. You need to be, this is your job. You need to help people through this. And I was like, I can't help myself through this. I don't know what to do. I've sort of come through that, and now I've actually been, dare I say, almost prolific in writing, which has felt really, really good. So that is just sort of starting to to bear fruit.
Oh, I can't wait to hear more about that. But ultimately, I mean, you are a poet at heart. When we talk about darkness or light, what do you ultimately hope we all, collectively, I guess, take away from this experience?
I hope that we as people recognize our sameness. I think there's a big reckoning that is hopefully happening, that as humans, we need to lean on each other. We need to recognize that we're all in this together. My hope is instead of retreating, we lean into this and try and figure out ways through it together that will strengthen us.
Well said, Sarah, really. Listen, it's great to hear you're going to be with the family at Christmas. You have a wonderful season. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, Gloria. Take care.
Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates. Rebate? Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
Let's bring in our meteorologist, Johanna Wagstaffe, once again. And Johanna, we've been gasping for air, coming up for breath in between systems. And today I was almost tempted to put sunglasses on my dog when I took him for a walk.
On the dog?
I mean, it was nice to put away his raincoat. We didn't need the umbrella. And he was kind of squinting, going, what is that bright light up there? So...
That is so cute. I'm going to obviously have to Google dogs and sunglasses after this, or make you post a picture. Yeah, it was sunglass weather for humans and canines alike, I would say, today. And that's probably the most sun we're going to see in a couple more days. So hopefully everyone got to enjoy it. Let me take you through the timing of the next weather maker. As I mentioned earlier, this is coming with some strong winds as well as the rain. So this is the next couple of hours. We'll see the rain fill in after midnight, ramping up through the pre-dawn hours, and then morning is when we'll start to really get those wind gusts coming in around the strait, so from the southeast. Just pausing you mid-morning on Friday, notice the reds and the oranges on the island. Heavy rain. We'll get that heavy rain tomorrow afternoon. Last push of the heavy stuff before that front rolls through Friday afternoon, and we'll see winds and rain ease tomorrow night. I've just let this run through to Saturday in the background. Saturday, we actually start off fairly dry. If you've got any morning activities, it's for Saturday afternoon that the next system comes in. But this Friday storm, let's get through one at a time. Take a look at the rainfall totals across the south coast. The yellows and the reds, that's sort of the 40 to 60 plus millimeter range. The snow levels will be around 1,400, so kind of rising a bit with the southwesterly flow. So the tops of the locals will get more snow. Big picture. It's not just the cold front, it's actually the center of a low moving through tomorrow, and that's always where when we get our strongest winds, when the center of the low is closest to us. Notice the blues across the coastal mountains as well. We are getting some fresh snow once again. There's our bit of a break Saturday morning, and then Saturday afternoon, that is quite the doozy to end the storm train. That is the caboose, you could say. We will have more showers in the forecast next week, but not nearly as stormy as it's been. Look across the province tomorrow, a glimmer of sun in through the Kootenays, and tomorrow afternoon in through central interior, getting a couple slushy centimeters in through the Okanagan, and Terrace and Stewart look for 2 centimeters as well. Heavy rain tomorrow. Then we've got the afternoon rain on Saturday. There's our hope for Sunday. More cloudy than anything, but more dry than anything as well. Looks like there's just a slight chance of showers on Monday, and then there's the sunshine for Tuesday. So we've got more sunshine before we get to the end of the month. And I'm not going to talk about Christmas yet because there's some interesting trends. So those details, Tanya and Mike, will be revealed shortly.
Oh, keep us guessing.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it's not going to be snow. I want to make sure I'm telling you it's going to be a washout of a Christmas before it is. So we'll stay tuned till that.
All right, Joe. Thanks very much. Well, a special group of singers showed off their voices outside of a long-term care home today.
A kindergarten class in Ontario held a concert for the residents of Kensington Gardens, and our colleagues in Toronto were there to capture their tunes. Take a look.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll get his story. Everyone wave,
What's your favorite song to sing? Maisie.
Jingle bells.
How come?
Because I like the part where you go dashing through the snow.
This is amazing. I love the kids sharing the holiday spirit with our residents here. It's been a tough year for our residents, and this will just make their day a little bit of light, but it's been a very difficult year. We typically, in the pre-pandemic, they used to come and sing songs during this time to our residents, so we have an established relationship with them. So this is a continued tradition for us.
The kids love it. They were very excited to know. They're just happy to be out of the classroom. So because of COVID and everything, it's great that we can actually go on these community walks, go out and see the community at an appropriate distance, and they get to see the community, get to be part of their area, not just walk by this building and say, hey, what's that? Now they know that there are residents here, that they receive some care, and if they see someone, they might be able to wave and smile at them.
Okay, it's quite cold today, but some of them did venture out to hear the kids and spread that holiday joy to them.
We came to bring them happiness.
It's really nice to see them all singing for us. Yeah, and it's cold, so they're really great. The residents love it. Staff all love it. It's great to see kids here.
We try and do field trips every year, and that's been hamstrung, so we're just trying to do different outreaches. Like today, we're actually later on in the afternoon, we're going to go visit little free libraries in the neighborhood, so we're just looking for things to kind of keep the kids engaged and interested in the area and the community.
Well, most holiday traditions and decorations are all about pretty lights and beautiful decorations. And then there's the ugly sweater. We'll show you how people are pulling up their sleeves to honor the tradition next.
My name's Corey Bossett. I live on this farm out here in Oak Bluff with my dad and my brothers and my whole family. We live here together. Let's go jump in. That's a good puppy. We were kind of bummed about not being able to do anything. And one day I was in one of the sheds and I was looking at this nativity scene here, and the idea popped in my head. I said, well, we're not allowed to see anybody or talk to anybody, but what if I just threw this thing together real quick, real simple, and just go drive around and blast some music into the neighborhood. Lights on, music on 10 all the time, and constant honking, and as the music is coming, they're dancing on the streets, on the sidewalks. You know, I questioned myself while we were putting it together. I'm like, man, am I really on the right track here? Are people gonna like this? And but within a second of seeing the kids, the joy and the happiness it brings to them, we're spreading some joy. The very first red light we actually came to, and the very first car that pulled up beside us happened to be a nurse who just came off shift. And she rolled down her window and said, "You just made my day." Check mark. My phone was just ringing off the hook with guys volunteering to come and take a turn at driving it. So we don't drive it every night. Members of the Knights of Columbus, they've all stepped up to come out and take a turn with their kids and their families. They get in the car and go drive around and have some fun. Whether it's Oak Bluff or Winnipeg, however you want to say it, I just hope people just get some new energy, get some hope. We're going to get through this. Just inspire people to keep the faith.
When it comes to picking out the perfect pandemic pet, it's not just dogs that have seen an increase in adoptive families. Cats and kittens are getting their dues too, according to the Meow Foundation's Director of Operations, Debbie Nelson.
Since COVID has happened back in the spring, we've had a really large uptake in applications and interest in adoption.
The foundation saw a 30% increase in applications in the first 6 months of this year compared to last. Deanna Thompson is the executive director at the Alberta Animal Rescue Crew Society. She says while there are 20 times more people looking to adopt dogs than there are available, there is an abundance of cats, but also an increase in people wanting them.
Hopefully that continues to trend even past COVID, that people will look to adopt a cat, ensure that it is spayed and neutered so that we can continue to work towards ending cat overpopulation, because it still very much is an issue now.
1,700 cats have been adopted at ARCS this year. Terry Trembath, CBC News, Calgary.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
This holiday season, kindness is needed more than ever. Do you know someone who's gone above and beyond? Enter them into our Acts of Kindness contest and they could win a CBC prize pack. Learn how to enter at cbc.ca/acts of kindness. And warm your home with holiday favorites and luminous carols with Corleone Men's Choir. RSVP today for this all-digital concert from the comfort of home at corleone.org.
Okay, if you haven't pulled out your ugly Christmas sweater yet, everybody's got one. Right?
Of course.
Tomorrow might be a good excuse. It is the official day, Tanya, for recognizing the phenomenon. The BC co-founders of the original ugly Christmas sweater party would normally be in the full swing of a party and fundraising season.
But the pandemic has forced them to do things a little differently this year, and they've now shared the new ways that they're honoring the season's ugliest attire while still giving back.
Our love for ugly Christmas sweaters started, in high school, really, when we loved creating costume parties with our friends. But it wasn't really until my Auntie Mary broke out her ugly Christmas sweater at a holiday party, and we kind of looked around and said, you know, that's ugly. And so we brought our friends together to just to have a jolly good old time, sing carols, do group hugs, and some dancing and prancing, and the rest is history.
Christmas sweaters were around for a long time. Of course, we didn't invent those. We just called them ugly, and decided to, make them a little trendy to focus our festive shindig on this cheesy attire.
3 or 4 years ago, Chris and I talked about writing a book eventually. So at that point, we kind of just wrote some notes down, had a real kind of basic storyline, and put it aside. It just wasn't the right time to write the book. We were still hosting our live events at the Commodore Ballroom and our 5K family run. And it wasn't until obviously the earth shook in 2020 when we were a little bit more limited to host our live events and carry on our brand. I think it was in March we had a phone call, and we were like, you know what, let's dig up that old manuscript and put some love into it. And I think this is the year that we could continue our legacy, just in a different format. The book is called The Ugly Christmas Sweater Rebellion, and it's a kid's book. It really is the values ethos of what we've learned in the last 20 years of bringing people together to celebrate, have fun, and be silly, all while wearing your ugly Christmas sweater. And we wrapped a little bit of our history, having founded the phenomenon, but we also led the story with a very meaningful message to connect, give, and be kind, which were 3 core values that were really important to Chris and I.
And there's also a give back components as well. So for every book sold, provides a meal to a child in need.
Why do we call our book The Ugly Christmas Sweater Rebellion? We were kind of noticing as the ugly sweater phenomenon grew way beyond what we had ever done. We started to see things that were kind of ugly and maybe weren't really true to what our original intention was. Big box companies profiteering, maybe taking advantage, things that we just thought weren't aligned with our original vision. Calling the rebellion in the title actually gave the sweaters the personality and the voice to say, hey, guess what, everyone? This is what it's really about. This is why it started. This was the original intention. These are the values. Connect, give, and be kind. It's nothing more complicated than that. If we could ask one thing of this phenomenon in this world and this trend, is that when you put on that sweater, you would know that connecting, giving, and being kind were your responsibility, all while donning your ugliest.
I like the mustaches. They both had them matching as well with the attire. So good on them.
Distracting you from the ugliness of the sweater.
Yeah, I suppose so. So I have a couple of ugly Christmas sweaters in my house. They're not mine, but they're all
brought it in tonight.
They're all sports related. So someone in my house is a Detroit everything fan.
Right.
So we've got Detroit Lions, Detroit Red Wings, probably a Pistons one in there too. But yeah, not many places to wear them now, though.
No, not really. I had one a few years ago.
Mhm.
I think I donated it back, probably because I got it from
So a recycled, ugly
Yeah.
Christmas sweater. Yeah, okay. All right, well, we'll have to just see how that goes. By the way, I want to point out the name of those guys, the BC co-founders of the original Ugly Christmas Sweater Party, all caps lock. Barely fit on the screen, but good for them. You can always find our newscasts online at cbc.ca/BC.
Because it is officially Ugly Sweater Day tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. Dan's here in a nice suit tonight,
Mhm.
11 right after the National. Thanks for watching.
Good night.